session for Monday, January. Happy New Year to everyone. We have several items on our agenda tonight. The first item deals with the Middle Big Creek Interceptor improvement. The district has grown large enough, and we recently got, or Jeff recently got legislation through that would allow for the entities that participate to make the decision for the issuance of bonds rather than having to go to the vote of the people, but we still need a resolution from 80% of those who participate within the district. So tonight, Mr. Jeff Shook, our director of the Little Blue Valley Sewer District, is here and to explain the Middle Big Creek project. So Jeff, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. And my intent today is just to make sure you understand the project and the need for it and the process to go through and answer any questions that you have. So there's a few slides there I will try to expedite. If it looks like you're on speed with me, I might move on from a slide, but please don't stop me if you have, or don't hesitate to stop me if you have any questions. It won't be my intent to skip over something. It's just simply I want to make sure I don't overdo it. So
this will be my third time to hear it, so I'll chip in if
yeah, you already said a couple things that weren't quite accurate, but sorry, Mayor.
Well, don't we need 6 of 8, or is it 8 or 10?
It's 6 of 8, 75%. Okay. 75%. Yeah.
75%. All
yeah.
Right. I was almost there.
Thank you. As the mayor said, my name is Jeff Shook. I'm the executive director for the Little Blue Valley Sewer District. Raymore is one of our unique customers in that they're served by the Little Blue Valley Sewer District and the Middle Big Creek Sewer Subdistrict. And so I'm going to explain a little bit about what those are to you so that you can understand. I believe you all have a copy of the slides, and it's my intent to go through those. And so today I'm just going to talk a little bit about the background of the district and the subdistrict. We're going to talk about the project that we have before us, the costs associated with that project, and how we would try to fund it, the potential rate impacts that might have to the customers of the subdistrict, and then give you an idea of the schedule on the project. So, so who we are, I'm going to move on to the slide where it says who we are. So the Little Blue Valley Sewer District is a sewer district that's created by state statute to serve the Little Blue River watershed, the valley that the Little Blue River traverses in. It includes 14 different customers all the way from the Missouri River out to Belton. The cities, and I won't try to state them all. They're all there in that slide. But Jackson County, Belton, Blue Springs, Lee Summit, Kansas City, Raytown, Raymore, Greenwood. Well, actually, Greenwood is different. Grandview is what I meant to say, and Belton. And so we've got a major interceptor that travels up that watershed and comes as far as Belton over by I-49. And it changes from size as it goes down and gets close to the plant. Where it comes into the plant, it's a 10-foot diameter pipe that's 50 feet in the ground. And so it drains by gravity all that way. And the Little Blue Valley Sewer District has a treatment plant there at the Missouri River that treats 52 million gallons of flow every day, or has the permitted capacity to do that. Some days when it's drier, we'd be in the 30s, and some days when it's raining, we've gotten upwards of 400 million gallons in one day. So, back in 1993, the Middle Big Creek Subdistrict was formed to serve southern Jackson County and northern Cass County. There was a old lagoon downstream of Lake Winnebago's dam that was failing, and it had a problem with an overflow into the streams and affected some fish. And so the state asked the district to help them in the formation of the subdistrict and take over the operation of the subdistrict. And so that's why the Little Blue Valley Sewer District actually runs the subdistrict. At that time, they built a series of pump stations, and those pump stations pump up over the ridge and go into that big pipeline I talked about that goes all the way to Missouri River. Back in I'm sorry, my dates just slipped. 2009, back in 2009, the sub-district was in a point where they needed to do something. Their pump stations were getting at capacity, they were getting old. And so the sub-district purchased the treatment plant from the city of Pleasant Hill and expanded it and now sends a large share of their flow the proper direction by a gravity pipe all the way to Pleasant Hill. And so Raymore has portions of their city that goes that direction, and that's basically to the east, and it goes all the way to Pleasant Hill to be treated. And then they have portions, I think, mostly served by Own Good Pump Station that gets pumped over to our big plant. And so what we're here to talk about today is the sub-district, not the Little Blue Valley Sewer District as a whole. They're both operated as separate cost centers, and so the costs of the sub-district is paid for by the customers of the sub-district. For instance, Kansas City is not a customer of the sub-district, and so the improvements we're looking to make, they won't be paid for by the city of Kansas City. They'll be paid for by the customers of the sub-districts. And so what we're currently doing is we're going to the sub-district customers, Raymore being one of them, and ask them to consider supporting with a resolution that says we can proceed with expansion of that plant at Pleasant Hill and some other improvements that I'll detail here in the next couple slides. Any questions yet? The sub-district's made up of 8 customers: Greenwood, Raymore, Lee Summit, Lake Winnebago, Pleasant Hill, the county, Cass County, and then 2 sewer districts. One's called Mullendike and one's called Dykeland. And again, as the mayor said, there was recent legislation that, because it's a wholesale district, I don't bill homes. You know, I couldn't go to someone's house and say, hey, I'm with this Middle Big Creek sub-district, and they know even who I am, because I don't send them bills. What we do is we look at our customer cities, our sewer district that we serve, and we bill them. And then they throw that in with all their other costs, and they develop their own rate. So the rates in Raymore are going to be different than the rates in Lee Summit. And so it's for that reason that the statute would allow us to go ahead and seek authorization for the debt from our customers. And our customers are the cities and the sewer districts in the county that we serve. And again, the collateral that backs those bonds that we would sell is the service agreement that we have with those communities, with those entities. In your slide, there is a drawing there that kind of gives you an idea what the sub-district is. That, I think it's red on your slide. It's basically from 150 Highway down to almost P Highway, if you know where that is, off of 291. And then it goes again completely east to the treatment plant at Pleasant Hill. As far as coming back west, I don't know specifically what parts of Raymore are served by, but Raymore would be the western edge of that sub-district. Now, I would say that also Lee Summit from about Pryor Road, from there to the east, is also served by the sub-district. So I'll give you a little background. As I've already said, the Middle Big Creek purchased that plant in Pleasant Hill, so they do have a treatment plant at Pleasant Hill currently. It treats 2.25 million gallons a day. Just to give you an idea of scale, remember the big plant that I have at the Missouri River is 52 million gallons a day, so it's significantly smaller. It's at that location. We also have, I believe it's Own Good has something similar. It has a big storage pond so that when we get flows greater than what the plant itself can handle, we can store it in the pond and then drain it back as the flows subside a little bit and we have available capacity. Additionally, we have about 30,000 linear feet of sewer pipe ranging from 54 Lake, and we call it the Rain Tree Pump Station, and we have a pump station just south. It's basically just north of the quarry there, outside of Greenwood, if you're familiar with that area. And those pump stations were built again in the early 90s, and so they are aging, and they are getting. Actually, the Greenwood pump station would be at capacity at this time. So, and that's one of the key drivers for this project. Next slide has 3 circles that says background. So one of the primary drivers of this project is the capacity. We've got growth happening in the sub-district, and the treatment plant is very near capacity. I'll show you a chart here in a little bit that shows how close. And then again, our pump stations are nearing capacity, and so we don't want to be in a position where the lack of availability of capacity affects what any community wants to do. And so we're trying to be ahead of it. And this project, you'll see in the schedule later, it's a 4-year project. And so it's kind of one of those things that we can't wait till we absolutely need it. We need to start it now because there's a timeline to secure financing, to do design, to do bidding, and so forth. So another key driver of the project is environmental. We've got a process at the Pleasant Hill treatment plant where we remove the solids from the wastewater as it comes in, and we remove it and we truck it and send it to our big plant. That's a fairly costly endeavor, as well as just environmentally, it's not the best to truck all that product, and we'd rather treat it in a much more cost-effective, much more environmentally friendly method down at the treatment plant. And someone mentioned the solids from a wastewater plant being useful for fertilizer. That is exactly what we'd like to do, is utilizing a process at the plant, convert those solids to something that's a usable product, and that's part of this project. Excuse me. The other thing, as I said, we've got 2 pump stations, and they obviously require electricity and a lot of energy to pump that flow back up over into the big pipe. And because we have limited capacity in Pleasant Hill, there are times when the flows come up that we do actually have to pump back over the hill, and that's not only more costly, but it's also risky, because as a pump station, it's a mechanical equipment. You can maintain it the best you can, but failures do happen, unexpected, even though. And so it's our wish and our intent, and it's really the right thing to do, to try to get away from a pumping situation. And so, again, the capacity that we're hoping to add as part of this project would enable us to, if not totally eliminate the pumping, really reduce it's our dependence upon it, and to really rare occasions. And so I did talk a little bit about the financial, that, you know, when we're not pumping, it's a cheaper endeavor to drain by gravity. Thank you. Yeah, I did. Thank you. Not hauling the sludge, that's another cheaper solution to be able to treat the sludge that's removed from the wastewater at Pleasant Hill. And then there's a little graphic there. It's pretty amazing. My slides aren't quite as big as yours, but for us to treat wastewater at the Pleasant Hill plant, it's $1.07 per 1,000 gallons, or sorry, per gallon. For us to pump it over to the Little Blue Valley Sewer District, the sub-district pays $2.04. So again, it would save the sub-district significantly, and the customers that are served by the sub-district to be able to treat it within the watershed rather than pumping it over. So those are the drivers, those are the needs for the project. I'd like to explain a little bit more detail about what the project is. I'm on the slide that says Phase 2 Project Overview. So first aspect of the project that I'd like to talk about is the elimination of the Greenwood pump station. As I said, it's aging, it's at capacity as it is. It's a costly endeavor to keep it going. So we have an interceptor that's built basically halfway to that pump station. It was built back in 2010-11 time period. If you can see on your slide there, the little double-headed arrow line that's in red, that's the gap that we need to span as a part of this project. Continue that interceptor all the way up to that pump station, and with the intent to do away with that pump station. That's about 17,500 feet of 36-inch diameter sewer. It would require the securing of easements. It would require all the geotechnical investigation. We actually are currently have archaeological folks on site investigating to try to identify the best path. We've been advised that there's a Civil War battlefield in that region. The Battle of the Ravines is what it was called. There is possible Native American settlements in the area, as well as maybe one prehistoric. And so we're out there trying to investigate to try to make sure we don't have surprises when we get to the project side. But again, it's a worthwhile endeavor to eliminate that pump station. Another aspect of the project would be, as it stands today, the sub-district bills our customers based on the number of connections that they report to us. So there's approximately 14,000 connections in the Middle Big Creek subdistrict. That means that when I say a connection, that's a business, a school, a residence, whatever that's connected to your sewers. Those get reported to the subdistrict as a connection. And so if there's 14,000 in the subdistrict and Raymore represents 20% of those, then, you know, but our rate is based on there's so many dollars per connection. So it's currently $38 per connection. There's no benefit there for anyone who decides to remove extra flow from the pipeline. There's really no benefit to, you know, it's really not appropriate that a school is charged $38 and a single family home is charged $38. They contribute significantly different amounts of flow. But what we have today is it's a surrogate for a flow measuring. And so we would like to transition to a flow measuring system where we would install meters on the sewer lines and actually meter the flow from customers. That really puts a customer in the driver's seat for what they pay. If they have a system that's well maintained, or if they have a system that's been rehabilitated and they reduce extra flow and other customers do not, then that community will benefit from a lesser share of the bill. And so we've talked about this to the advisory board and the customers, and there seems to be a 100% agreement that that's the way they want to go. It definitely seems appropriate that, you know, when you have an industry in the south side of one of our customers and they contribute a lot of flow and yet they're paying $38 a month versus, and again, that's how we charge the customer city. We're not charging those industries or those homes. They set their own rate on how they bill those entities. But for a city to say, well, you've got 100 of these big flow connections and I've got 100 of these smaller flow connections, but we're basically paying the same price. That just didn't. So they really wanted us to incorporate the flow metering as a part of this. So, so we are looking. That is a part of this project.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So, and that technology, I guess, is out there and being utilized in other.
It is. Yeah.
Kind of a standard. Is that?
So the technology is continuing to improve. The Little Blue Valley Sewer District actually has billed Raymore as well as all its other customers for almost 3 decades now using flow meters. And so we are just bringing the sub-district up to the standard. The problem that has kept the sub-district from doing is just the significant capital cost to start that process. But yes, the technology has been there and it has improved and it's continuing to improve. And so now there still are going to be situations where it's just not cost effective for me to put in a couple $100,000 meter to meter 5 homes. We'll have to identify that flow component a little differently. Maybe we'll use water consumption records, or maybe we'll use a temporary meter that we put in for a window and say, okay, it's like winter averaging might happen. So, any other questions?
Yeah, because Cass County only has
5 connections.
even though they're a member of the district, they only have actual 5 connections.
Right.
Yeah.
So we talked about the interceptor. We talked about the meters. Next aspect I'd like to talk about the project is the actual treatment plant. And so this slide here, I'm sorry, and it's probably hard to see, but it's got 4 squares, and it says wastewater WWTF improvements on it. Those are 4 aspects of what we intend to do at the treatment plant as part of this project. First, we're going to increase the treatment capacity there from 2.25 million gallons a day to 7.5. And I'll talk a little bit later about how we came to that number. We're also going to increase the amount of storage at the plant so that when we do have those peak flow events, we don't have to kick on those pumps and pump it over the ridge and pay that higher cost. We can actually store it at the plant, let it come down by gravity, and then treat it when we have the available capacity. We do foresee on the horizon that we're going to have some little bit of stricter limits coming out of the treatment plant for nutrients. Quick synopsis, nutrients are nitrogen and phosphorus, and what they do is they facilitate the growth of algae in the waterways. That algae it sometimes is good for the sake of putting oxygen in the water, but then in the evenings when there's not sunlight, then they actually become a draw on the oxygen, and so they can very significantly negatively impact the aquatic life in streams. And so Missouri is not a leader in this. Many states have had these requirements many years already, but we do see it coming in Missouri that we're going to have more strict limits on our nutrients that we discharge from our treatment plants. And so it's something the plant can do. We just have to add some additional treatment processes, and so that is a part of this project. And then lastly, I talked about treating the solids at the treatment plant. It's strange to use the term technology, but this technology that we're looking at is the use of a reed plant. They call them reed beds. It's a concrete rectangular structure that we would spray the water solids, a slurry of the solids that we've removed, and those plants will actually break down that solid. They'll take up the nutrients and they'll grow, and then the water would then be taken back through the treatment plant, and then eventually that broken down product that the plants have broken down becomes a fertilizer product, and it's actually a useful product for the sake of agriculture or what have you. There is a cycle on that. So these beds, these reed beds, you can apply to them for like so many years, and then you have to remove what's accumulated. And whereas it was sludge from wastewater, the plants have converted it basically to soil amendment. And then we would remove it and replant the plants and then go another 7 years. And so it's being successfully used in Sedalia and Warrensburg both. Also, there's a place outside St. Louis that's being used. So, but it's a reed bed treatment is what it's called. Moving on to the next slide. This is the slide where I'll try to explain why we sized the treatment plant the way we did. If you look at the bar graph on the left side, it says current. You got the line that says 2.25 million gallons a day, and then you've got a line that says 5 million gallons per day. As you can see, our first inclination was to expand the treatment plant to 5 million gallons a day. But if you look at our current, that bar is very close to the 5 line already. That means by the time we would have the treatment plant built, we would basically be at capacity already. And so, and usually when we plan projects like this, we do a 20-year look ahead, or by 2025, we would be over the capacity of the plant. We'd have to use those pump stations again. And so we looked at the next, so the plants are like modular. You basically, what we have today, we talked about building one more, just a mirror of it, and that would make it 5 million gallons a day. Well, instead, we decided to go with 2 of those and get to the 7.5. And there's a little bit of engineering calculations that was able to get it to 7.5 versus the 6 3/4 what the mirror would be. But the reality is that's a tremendous benefit to our customers, so that they don't have to worry about capacity for the future. As they have pressures to build additional developments, to add commercial, to add industrial, they will be able to, as the sub-district, be able to say, we have the capacity for you. So. I'm going to skip over a couple slides here because I believe I've touched these. I'll tell you, well, let's just go to the project cost and funding. The project cost is $106 million. You can see on that, on the rectangle there at the bottom, you've got the interceptor of $27 million, the metering of $2 million, and the treatment plant of $77 million. And that's how they come up with the $106 million. We are currently looking at a couple different alternatives for funding this. There is the Missouri State Revolving Fund It's a low-interest loan through the state of Missouri, through the Missouri Department of Natural Resources, that would enable us to borrow the money at a subsidized interest rate. Our estimates right now that we would be able to borrow that money at 1.7% interest. However, there are a little bit of more restrictions with regard to that, so we still are considering just a conventional financing where we would go out and sell revenue bonds on the market. We're working with financial advisor Piper, it used to be Piper Jaffray, I can't remember what they're called today, but to help us with that. We're also working with Gilmore and Bell as our bond counsel to help us identify what our options are and what's best for the sub-district. As it stands today, we have applied our project to the state, and we are on their planning list. In order for us to be able to be funded, we have to secure our approvals by our customers, or the 75% of our customers, as well as we have to have our facility plan approved by the state. We have submitted our facility plan and we're waiting their review and comments. And so the process that we're in today with our customers seeking the authorization would be the next step to move us from they know about us, but they haven't identified dollars for us, to now we've identified dollars for you. And so that is something we hope to have probably by midsummer as far as the state's approval. It's our hope that by the end of this month, we will have all our customer approvals. We haven't given up. The district is not a governing agency like our customers, and so we have not received ARPA monies. We've been in conversation with the state, and the state does have ARPA dollars that they're going to make available for wastewater projects this summer. We are working to try to make sure that we're there to be a recipient. Obviously, that's a legislature funding initiative that we'll have to wait to see how the state legislature allocates those dollars in the budget. There's also been another bill passed by Congress, the infrastructure bill, that also has significant dollars identified for wastewater projects. And so what we present to you today is based on not receiving either one of those. We want to make sure that we don't represent a better than likely. We would rather prepare for the worst, but I believe there's a very high likelihood that we'll be able to receive some of these dollars and reduce some of the dependence we have on this financing. So what does this mean to Raymore and rates? And because we're transitioning from the per connection charge to the flow charge, it gets a little difficult. So I've spelled it out here in some bullets for you. In order to do this project, the sub-district's budget's going to go up on an average about 5.2% per year. What that means is that's the average increase to customers. So if a customer experiences, as we start to meter flows, they identify that they're able to reduce flows, then they may not experience that full increase. But if a customer is one that has a lot of extra flow, they might experience greater than that. And the reason why it's so high over the next 10 years is because the subdistrict does currently have debt. We've got when we purchased the plant in Pleasant Hill, when we expanded that plant at that time, we borrowed $38 million, and we're still paying on that. And it's about 10 years in. So we still have 10 years of those payments to make. That's why we're really hopeful to receive some of these government funds. We've also been in discussion with the state about refinancing our current SRF loan, because the interest rates today are less than what they were when we did do that. So, and we're pretty hopeful we might be able to accomplish that in the next month. So what does that mean as far as rates to our customers? If we were to keep it on a per connection basis, that's going to mean that about an average of a 3.8% increase over the next 10 years. That's based on what our customers told us, that their growth projected for their communities is going to be this many homes, and they'll have this many more homes to spread that cost across. And that would range over the 10 years. There would be years where there wouldn't be an increase, and there would be years where there might be as much as a $5 per connection. But again, let me remind you, it's not our intention to do it on a per connection basis. So that's just to help communicate the message of what it would be like, not what it would be. If I try to communicate it in a flow-based, that would be an average rate starting at $4.70, and it would go to about $5.10 per gallon. So, yes, sir. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So just to check for understanding, the numbers based on this slide in particular, I just want to make sure I've got this right. These are top end worst case scenario. You have to do everything with bonding.
Yes,
and
sir.
So those numbers could ostensibly go down if you receive some ARPA funding or
Absolutely.
other sources. Okay. Thank you.
Let me also say, what we're seeking approval next week is the permission to proceed with the debt issuance. The sub-district advisory board, of which your mayor sits on, and the mayor and the board of trustees of the Little Blue Valley Sewer District, of which your mayor sits on, they would ultimately approve those steps. And so it doesn't mean that all decisions are made and it's a for sure thing at that point. You know, if we get a few months down the road and, you know, the money isn't there and it's looking worse, there's an opportunity to reconsider what we're going to proceed with. And so it would be a hard decision, because then you have to make decisions on what we provide for the future. But ultimately, this is not you just sold the future. This is not the case. This is actually providing for the future. This is going to make the opportunity to have those new developments. So, because as it stands today, we do have a capacity concern, and it's only going to get worse without these improvements. And then lastly, I show you there the project schedule. I talked about it being a 3-year project. What we're seeking to do today, the Board of Trustees has authorized us to come to you to ask this question. And we're seeking our customers to approve that measure, to authorize us to proceed with issuance of revenue bonds. Upon receipt of that, we would proceed with issuing a design contract to our engineers so that they could start the design, and that takes about a year. And as a part of that design, we'll identify the most cost-effective way to build it. You know, right now we think, well, we need about this big a tank or about this. They would come to the real specific sizing, the real cost. We would identify the actual alignment of the sewer line, you know, because we've done geotechnical investigation and there's a lot of rock over here, or there's well, we need to avoid this area because there's a cultural resource that we need to avoid. Excuse me. And so after that year of design, we would then bid the project. Again, upon receiving bids from contractors, if those bids are good, we can follow through. The advisory board and the board of trustees would approve that. And if they aren't as we've communicated, they can make the decision to say we need to do something different. And so there are decision points still to be made. And then lastly, it's our hope to have the project done by November of 2025. And I think that's all I have, subject to any questions anybody might have.
Yeah, I think the rest of the slides are there for your information. It gives a little bit of a timeline on what we're open to pursue, and a little more of the pictures and flow charts with regard to that. So I'll let you look at those at your leisure. And if anybody has any additional questions for Mr. Shook at this time.
My plan is to be back next week. So,
Okay.
And Mike and the mayor both have my contact info. If you have any questions you want to ask before then, I'll be happy to answer them. I actually live in Peculiar, so if you even wanted me to come in and meet with you, I could do that too.
Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, sir. The reason that Jeff is indicating he will be here next week is because we do have the model ordinance prepared, and it will be on the council's agenda for next week. So a lot of this will kind of be a repeat next
Actually,
Monday
it's a
night.
resolution, correct?
Our resolution, thank you,
Okay.
sir.
All right.
It wouldn't be my intention to do the presentation again unless you guys want me to.
No, I understand. No.
I mean, the mayor's heard it 3 times now. He might want to hear it again. But
6 of 8, 75%. Got it.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I had a question real
Townsend.
quick. On the potential rate impacts slide, can you just walk me through the numbers that I see here? Just doing the simple marine math. As I read through this, it says the average annual is 5.2% annually over 10 years, or the estimated average of 3.8 annually over the next 10 years. As I look at that, it reads to me as if it's going to increase 50% in 10 years or 38% in 10 years. Am I reading that correctly? Okay, and that's what you charge us, the city, and then we'd have to evaluate our services that we charge to the residents of
Correct.
of the community.
the 5.2% is what the budget of the sub-district would need to be increased to be able to meet the debt payments.
But adding on this additional project.
Yes, sir.
Because of the existing bond from 2011.
Yes, sir.
And then based on the growth that the cities have said, that's where that 3.8%.
That's why it's less than the 5.2. Yes, sir.
Over the 10 years. And then the per connection rate also ranges as well. Okay. And again, that flow portion of the transition to a flow-based billing, residents have more control over that.
Yes, sir.
Because they can see their bill and realize, just like, I need to change how I do things, basically. So.
And that's why it's hard for me to really say how it's going to impact Raymore versus Lee Summit versus Mullendike, because be quite honestly, I don't know how much your flow today is extra flow that's maybe coming from the ground or from stormwater connections or what have you. I talked to Mike, and I understand you guys are investing in your system, and you do studies for that. So I wouldn't have any reason to believe that you wouldn't be on the positive side of that. But again, I don't know that.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry. Yeah, it's your mayor. It's your meeting. Sorry, Mayor.
Mr. Shook, appreciate you coming before us and a good presentation. This is our definition of planned growth.
Yeah.
And so, we have been growing, and a lot of times there's a little heartburn with that. But you have to plan ahead, and this is part of the planning ahead to make sure that we can continue to do that, and it makes sense. So I do think this is a good project, and appreciate, again, you coming out tonight.
Thank you, sir. Son?
Just a probably very quick question, and I apologize if you already said this. So those fee increases would only be for people served by Middle Big Creek, or would be for the entire Little Blue Valley?
So those increases would be what I charge the Raymore. And Raymore, I believe, has a blended rate. So a home that's served by Little Blue versus a home that's served by Middle Big Creek, I believe all those costs.
Dearborn, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, that's probably appropriate.
As the council is aware, each year we bring to you, and this one has to be a public hearing, we bring to you all of the costs that are associated with this. We actually don't, we charge the customers a combined rate. I would not call it a blended rate.
Okay.
Each year we make a determination on what our water costs are, what our sewer costs are, and with Middle Big Creek and Little Blue, those two are blended into the sewer rate, but the sewer rate is kept separate from the water rate. And then, as the council is aware, we're on a cost of service model. So we only charge our customers what the costs that are indicated. There is no fee over and above the costs that we're getting here. But if I could ask for just is that clear, what I just said, as far as our model is concerned? And again, the sewer portion of that model has to be a public hearing each year, which we bring to the council in open session, obviously. And each year, then the sewer rate may go up, the water rate may go down, or vice versa, based on what we're hearing. The point of clarification I'd like to have, so to Councilmember Townsend's question, he asked about the 5 and the 3.8%. Jeff, is that, so next year, 5% gets added. In year 2, 5% gets added on top of the 5%, or it is over the 10-year period, each year, there is a 5% increase over year 1 only.
No, it would be
Cumulative.
It would be cumulative.
Okay. So the
And that's
potential
an
is that
average
the
over 10 years. So 1 year it might be less than 1 year it might
Right.
be more. But
Right. There are a lot of moving parts there. I get it because of the changeover in the billing method, which I do know Mr. Crass has indicated that the changeover in the billing method for the city of Raymore is going to be more favorable than some of the other cities participating in Middle Big Creek.
I'm sorry, you're asking me that question?
No, I'm just
Oh, okay.
commenting on what I've heard from Mr. Crass. I wouldn't
can't say
hold
there
you
are
to
customers
any
who
of
have
those
more
numbers this evening,
extraneous
Jeff.
costs.
So I'll ask Jeff, so when the district bills us, are we billed separately for Middle Big Creek and Little Blue Valley?
That's correct.
And then that is blended by the city to come up with an overall payment that's made by our rates that are adjusted on an annual basis, correct?
That is correct, sir.
All right. Okay. And I think we've got, we have about 1,200 on the Middle Big Creek side of the ridge. Is there that many connections?
Just slightly over.
Right in the
And
back of
and
your-
obviously, because of the area that it's
Yeah.
at, it doesn't,
Okay.
it is a much slower moving area right now.
that slide deck.
That's going to increase a little bit.
Right.
but-
Yeah, we've got a couple of projects on the books now for
Correct.
increase in that area. So I think isn't it everything east of Kurzweil? Or does it go further over to Prairie Lane? I know the ridge line is there somewhere, but I can't read.
It's a little farther to the west than Kurzweil.
Yeah. Is it? Okay, all right. Good to know. I was trying to add up in my head all those subdivisions. Okay. Yes. Oh, wait a minute. John has had a question and had his hand up. John, go ahead.
I think Mr. Fearborn asked my question. I just wanted to clarify. So when you talk about a 3.8% increase, my understanding is that's not a 3.8% every year compounded, is it?
Yes.
It is. Okay.
It's an average increase each year.
Average increase. So over 10 years, you're looking at a 80% increase, not a 38.
I'm sorry, I don't have that
By the
number,
time you
but
compound
yeah.
it out, it's
Yeah, I believe you're probably accurate.
All right. That clarifies it for me. Thank you.
And again, that's one of the other things that apply there is growth. It wouldn't be that much if there's more growth, but it could be more than that if there's less growth. I know right now there's a lot of growth, so.
Go ahead.
So just to use an analogy, it's kind of back to my point before, and I appreciate it. I think you had really good transparency in this. This is basically worst case scenario. You've got to issue bonds on everything, which if I'm buying new windows for my house, it's going to cost me this. This is my top end line. It's going to cost me this many thousands of dollars. But I might get a credit back from the federal government for weatherizing my house, going to drop my overall costs down. And I should see an increase or a decrease in the electricity that I use or the gas to heat or cool my house, lowering my costs even further. And you've got a number of those things in there, the potential for ARPA funds or other grant or low-interest funding from the government, as well as some possible operational efficiencies within this project once it's done that would help lower costs potentially as well, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Barber.
Yeah, I just had a couple questions too. And I'm hearing in your presentation, if we don't do this, two things could happen. Costs could still go up because your costs would go up in your current way that you treat it and get rid of the sewer now. And the second component of that is you could say, hey, no more connections. We can't take any more connections, so you could stagnate some growth in parts of our area and other places area by saying we can't take any more, we're at capacity, we can't take any. Is that kind of a doomsday?
That would be the net effect. I wouldn't do that, by the way. The way that happens is if, let's say you have a development that wants to develop, their developer is required to receive a letter from the treatment provider that says there's available capacity. If I don't have it, then I don't say there's available capacity, and the state would not issue him a permit to build that. So that would not be my role to say no, but a net effect would be that.
Anybody have anything else? If not, we'll see that resolution on our next agenda. Jeff, thank you for your time. Appreciate you coming out. Next item on our agenda is the process for interviewing for vacant council seats. Mr. Feuerborn, you want to finalize that process for us tonight?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just wanted to bring back one last time for a couple of different reasons. You'll remember that a couple of months ago, we had a work session where we were trying to get clarification from the council, because at our last interview process for new council or for council candidates, we had brought in a set group of questions, and then there was a departure on the part of the council to begin asking another series of questions. I think the way that we ended that with the council, and then I also need to make a clarification on a statement that I made during that to clear something up, because I made a mistaken statement during that meeting. I believe that what the council came to is a three-part questioning sequence to the candidates. Part one would be prepared questions that the council would agree on ahead of time. And you will remember in the 1 month period or the 3 week period where the candidates can be filing and entering their names for consideration, we will always in any given year bring the prepared questions back to you all to make sure that you're all comfortable with what is going to be asked. That's group one. Group two is if any of the council members seek clarification from the candidates on any of the answers that they have given, there would be time right after the prepared questions to ask ad hoc questions on those. And then the opportunity at the end, because I think that the council indicated that they felt it was valuable, the series of questions that came forward, at the end would be a period of time where the city council could ask ad hoc questions based on any current events that are going on, any points that they feel are salient at the time, city related or otherwise related, for council candidates to answer. Of all of those, group one and group three, whoever the moderator is, and you'll remember that particular night, the mayor was absent, Councilmember Townsend was the moderator. At any given time, 1 and 3, the prepared questions and the ad hoc questions would be asked of all of the candidates, because the clarification questions may be that a council member did not understand something that one or all of the candidates answered. That would give the opportunity for a council member to get clarification on a question that was asked. Also wanted to add, very importantly, that when we were having that discussion on the questions a couple of months ago, I indicated that I felt like all of the questions were ad hoc questions besides the prepared questions, with the exception of Councilmember Circo had asked a question that I felt was, my notes indicated was a clarification question because it was very, very similar to one of the prepared questions. It was about groups that the candidates belong to in that. And I had wrongly indicated, I don't know why I had this in my notes this way, I had incorrectly indicated that he had asked that question of the gentleman candidate. In fact, he directed the question first to, was his language, he directed the question first to Councilmember Will Scherzer, who was then candidate Will Scherzer, and Councilmember Townsend then jumped in and said, as moderator, I'll go ahead and determine the order of the questions. And again, the reason I felt like his was a little bit different is it had been a question that had been posed in a different format beforehand. The whole point of bringing it up was there's room within there for both those types of questions. And I think the council felt value in both of them, the ad hoc questions as well as the clarification questions. My apologies to Councilmember Circo for incorrectly identifying the person who he put the question to first. But just wanted to get clarification from the council. Are you good with that process overall?
Seeing a lot of nodding heads here in the room,
Perfect, sir. Thank you very much.
unless anybody has anything additional they'd like to. Go ahead, Mr. Circo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that, Mr. Fearborn. Yeah, I guess that night I wasn't here, and he had said I directed a question to the one gentleman, and not the other two had the opportunity to answer. That never happened, but the way it was said, like I did something directly for him, but it wasn't. And I thank you for that clarification, because that would totally be unethical if I would just directed a question to one and not let the other two candidates answer. But I just went ahead and asked a question of all three and started with her. Then Mr. Townsend, of course, stepped in and redirected to the three, so they all had a chance to answer. But thank you again, Mr. Fearborn, for clearing that up. I appreciate it.
Not a problem else.
All right. There's nothing else on that. We'll move along to item C, which is the big one for tonight. Well, I guess Middle Big Creek was pretty big, money-wise. So we have the city attorney and the city prosecutor contracts. Mr. Fearborn?
I thank you, sir. I'm going to ask Mr. Zur to go into the executive conference room at this time, since he'll be part of this and until he learns to behave.
Do we move into executive session or keep it open? Just
No,
keep
this
it
has to be open,
Okay.
sir.
All right.
Is he out of the room? Thank you. So as the agenda indicates, February next month, the 2-year contracts for our city attorney and our city prosecutor will be up each year. I asked the council essentially how you would like to proceed and have some recommendations for you on that. I am recommending to the council that you allow me to enter into negotiations with the city attorney and the city prosecutor for extending their contracts for 2 years. The council does, of course, have the ability at any given time when the contracts are up to put out a request for qualifications on both of those positions. The duties of our city attorney have been fulfilled, I feel, in admirable fashion over the course of the last 2 years. I consider him as much a member of staff as any of our management team members, even though he is a contracted employee. I consider Mr. Marshall's work as is involved with the prosecution of our criminal matters to be solid. I have had some concerns relative to our code enforcement cases coming before the court, and would like to talk to you about that just very briefly here. Mr. Zur is intimately involved on a daily basis every single week with planning and zoning. He is the attorney in front of planning and zoning. He is intimately involved with the Board of Adjustment, and he is intimately involved with the Board of Appeals, all of which require an expert and intimate knowledge of the UDC, which is the cases that I would like to address with the council this evening. Specifically, I would like the council, if the council is inclined to renegotiate with both of these individuals, I would like to remove the prosecutorial aspect of UDC cases from Mr. Marshall and ask Mr. Zur to consider a special prosecutor's role for our UDC cases, since he is so intimately involved with the UDC on a day-to-day basis. He has a much better knowledge of it than Mr. Marshall does. I think he has a better understanding from the start of these cases exactly what is going on in somebody's home. He also understands, and I have spoken with him a number of times about it, unlike when someone gets a ticket, that's a one, I don't want to call it a one-time thing, but it happens on the timeline. It happens at a point in time and then it's over until it comes before the judge. The problem with UDC cases is someone's not mowing their lawn and they live across the street from one of you all's neighbors, and that neighbor is calling you all because there is a tendency for continuances, and there is a tendency for some negotiation in those criminal cases, a traffic ticket that doesn't bear the same level of urgency, I feel, to get it taken off the books and get the matter resolved that a UDC case does. Because your neighbors and my neighbors are having to look at those issues day after day, while sometimes this drags on for what I feel is too long a period of time. I feel that Mr. Zur understands that, has a better ability to address that, because he is, excuse me, because he is, he's the first person we call long before Mr. Marshall ever sees it. So my recommendation in short would be that you allow me to enter into negotiations with Mr. Marshall to continue prosecution services for the city, but remove the UDC prosecution cases and allow me to enter into negotiations with Mr. Zur for his normal general counsel duties, as well as special prosecutor to the city for UDC. That concludes staff report on this item, sir.
John, do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Fearborn, thank you for that. As we often do when we ask you to negotiate on our behalf, are you comfortable with us putting a limit on how much negotiating we're going to do? I understand we would likely be paying Mr. Marshall a little bit less, taking the UDC away from him, and obviously paying Mr. Zur more because of that. But is there a net amount of increase that you'd be comfortable with? Since you're negotiating on our behalf, and I'll let you answer that.
Because at this time we are seeing an uptick in normal prosecution cases, finally, my limit with Mr. Marshall, I would ask the council for no more than what he is currently being paid. And Mr. Zur is paid by the hour. So I would anticipate no more than needing any more than a 3% for Mr. Zur. And again, that would be 3% on his hourly wage.
Thank you.
And again, I'm not asking for anything formal because, again, both of these contracts have to come back before the council in any event. And so at that point in time, you would have the ability to approve or disapprove whatever got agreed to with it.
We know, Jim, that when we talked about it, we'd even talked about a potential third prosecutor, but I think it makes much more sense because of Mr. Zur's intimate relationship with UDC issues with his other clients, that he would be the natural go-to person for those prosecutions. So I think that your suggestion's a pretty good one from my perspective. I'm hoping everybody else kind of feels the same way too. I think we're getting universal acceptance here. So when would you bring that back to the group?
I would hope that we would be having first read on both of the contracts after the week after our next work session.
Okay.
And second read the first meeting of February.
So you would present everything at the next work session?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Everybody good with that?
And another question associated with that, would you want the prosecutor and Jonathan there just if they had any comments or questions over the course of the past 2 years? I will tell the council we did it 2 years ago,
Yeah.
but it was a whole lot of silence. Nobody had a whole lot to say.
Sure. No. I think it'd be, I don't see why they'd have to be, but Jonathan's going to be here anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
Very good, sir. We will proceed accordingly.
Okay. Great. That brings us, unless there's something else on that, that brings us to item D, other. Does anybody have anything they'd like to bring up this evening? If not, is there any reason to move into executive session?
There is, sir, personnel.
Okay. All right. So I'd entertain a motion to move into executive session.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we move into executive session to discuss personnel matters as authorized by revised Missouri Statute 610.021, subsection 3.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to move into executive session. Could I have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Berenson? Yes. Councilmember Holman?
Yes.
Councilmember Abdelgawad? Councilmember Barber?
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend?
Yes.
Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Councilmember Serco?
Yes.
Councilmember Will Scherzer?
Yes.
Thank you all. When we're done with the executive session, we'll be done for the evening. So I would excuse Mr. Pfeiffer from the building. Yeah, thank you, sir. Have a good evening.